Snow was coming down so hard I could barely see the road. Just two ghostly headlights and a heartbeat on the dash. Then I saw her, hazard lights blinking weak in the drift, a hand pressed against the glass. My little girl whispered, "Daddy, someone might need help." And before I knew it, I was out in the storm, pulling a stranger from the dark. I didn't know it then, but that night on the highway was about to change both our lives. I don't pick fights with Wyoming winters. I just keep my head down, keep the truck between the lines, and get my little girl home. That night the lines were gone. Everything was white. Road, sky, fences, like the world got erased, and nobody told me. The wipers beat a tired rhythm, and the heater worked overtime while my daughter, Ella, slept under my old denim jacket in the back seat with a stuffed fox tucked under her chin. A ping sounded on the dash. Ice warning, as if I needed the reminder. I leaned forward, elbows tight on the wheel, and eased off the gas. Out here, speed is just a fancy way to meet a tow truck. Then I saw it, a weak red blink through the blow, hazard lights half buried in a drift down in the ditch. My stomach did that small drop it does when something isn't right. I told myself it wasn't my problem. People call 911. People wait. People mind their own business. Then Ella stirred and mumbled without opening her eyes. "Daddy, someone might need help." That was that. We don't drive past folks in trouble. Not in my family. I nosed the truck onto the shoulder and threw it in park. The wind hit the cab like a linebacker the second I opened the door. Snow found my neck no matter how I tucked my collar. I yelled back, "Stay put, Peanut." Doors locked. Got a sleepy thumbs up in return. The ditch was deeper than it looked. I slid the last few feet on my boots and planted a hand on the SUV's quarter panel to keep from going face first into the drift. The back end sat crooked, front buried. I yanked the driver's door. Frozen. I planted my shoulder and gave it one angry shove. It cracked free with a noise like breaking glass. She was inside. Early 30s, pale as the snow around us. Hands stuck to the wheel like it was the only thing keeping her here. No hat. Lips going blue. She looked at me and tried a word that didn't make it past her teeth. "You're okay," I said, louder than I meant to over the wind. "I'm Ben, mechanic from town. We're getting you warm." No time for speeches. I checked her pulse, thin but there, then peeled off my gloves and pushed the blanket from under my coat around her shoulders. Her body shook the way old engines shake right before they stall. "Can you walk?" I asked. She tried. Her legs answered no. "All right, don't fight me." I lifted her. She weighed less than a full toolbox and turned into the wind. Every step up that incline felt like two. Snow blew down my collar and up my sleeves. Halfway to the truck, I thought about all the dumb choices I'd made in my life. This wasn't one of them. I got the passenger door open and slid her in, shut it fast, then looped around to the other side and cranked the heater to full blast. Warm air takes a minute to do anything in a storm like that, so I grabbed my thermos and pressed it into her hands. "Sip," I said. "Not fast. You'll get sick." She obeyed like a kid who finally trusts the coach. Ella pushed herself up on her elbows. "Is she okay?" "She will be," I said, keeping my voice even. The truck shook as a gust hit us sideways. "We're just letting the heat do its job." The colors started creeping back into the woman's face. Her eyes focused. They were the kind that could cut through boardrooms when they wanted, but right then they looked like they were trying to figure out where the ground was. "You stopped," she whispered. "Road was empty," I said. "Didn't feel right leaving it that way." She gave a small, tired nod. I turned the vents toward her and rubbed my hands to get feeling back in my fingers. After a little, while the shaking slowed, she took another careful sip and leaned her head against the seat like the fight had finally drained out of her. "Okay," I said, thinking out loud. "We're not riding this storm out on the shoulder. I'll pull you free and we'll caravan to town. Slow and steady. If your SUV won't behave, you're riding with us." I left them in the heat, hooked up the winch by feel more than sight, and pulled her SUV out of the ditch inch by inch. The bumper didn't love me for it, but it cleared. I climbed back in, snow melting down my neck, and looked over. "You good to follow?" She swallowed, found her voice, and said, "Yes." It wasn't strong, but it was steady. "All right," I said. "We're headed to the diner. Coffee, eggs, and a waitress who thinks I'm crazy for being out in this mess. Stay on my tail. If you lose me, I'll lose you back." Ella gave a little wave from the back seat. The woman tried a smile that didn't quite make it and lifted her hand in return. We rolled out. I kept my speed at the kind of crawl that makes impatient people honk in July. The hazard lights from her SUV glowed in my mirror, a red heartbeat in the whiteout. Mile after mile, I talked to myself the way I talk to cranky engines. Easy, patient, one thing at a time. The world outside the windshield narrowed to 2 tracks and a promise. By the time we hit the town limits, the storm had eased from a scream to a steady hiss. Streetlights looked like warm coins in the snow. I swung into the diner's lot and parked next to the door so no one would have to be brave for long. I jogged through the drift, opened her door, and offered a hand. This time she stood on her own, legs wobbly but willing. Inside, the bell over the door announced us like we were regulars returning from a fishing trip. Heat, coffee, and frying bacon did their work on all 3 of us. The waitress shot me that look that says, "You again?" and started pouring without asking. The woman sat, both hands around the mug, breathing like the worst of it had finally passed. She glanced at Ella, at me, then down at the steam. "Listen," I said, keeping it simple, "you don't owe me a speech. Warm up, eat something salty. We'll sort the rest." She nodded once. Her eyes softened. A quiet thank you landed between us, no bigger than a napkin, but it felt like something solid in a night that kept shifting under our feet. I didn't know who she was. Didn't matter. All I knew was the highway tried to swallow somebody, and my kid reminded me what my job was. I'm a father. I'm a mechanic. I fix what's broken and I don't leave people in ditches. That's the whole story. At least it was, until morning. That part one couldn't see yet. All I could see was snow sliding off my boots, a full plate hitting the table, and my daughter coloring a truck with a little red light on the back. Sometimes the only way through a storm is forward, one quiet decision at a time. That night, we made the right one. And it changed everything I thought I knew about where a simple turn of the wheel can take a man. By the time I pushed open the diner door, the world outside was a half-remembered nightmare. All wind, cold, and white noise. Inside was color again. The soft yellow of old bulbs, the hiss of the coffee machine, the smell of bacon and fried potatoes. Ella ran ahead, boots squeaking, and slid into our usual booth by the window. I guided the woman I'd pulled from the snow to the seat across from her. She moved slow, like every muscle had to think first. The waitress, June, who's been serving half this town since the Reagan years, looked up and shook her head. "Ben Turner, you out rescuing people again?" "Storm didn't leave me much choice," I said, stomping snow from my boots. She poured 3 coffees before I even asked. Then the first round's on me. The woman cupped her mug with both hands, staring into the steam like it might answer a question she hadn't figured out how to ask. Her cheeks were pink again, her hair damp around the edges, but her coat still looked too expensive for a night like this. Even half-thawed, she carried that quiet kind of elegance that doesn't belong in a truck stop. Ella leaned across the table, all curiosity and no filter. "Daddy said you were stuck in the snow. Were you scared?" A small smile tugged at the woman's lips. "I was. Very. Don't worry," Ella said, serious as a doctor. "He's good at fixing things." The woman looked at me, something amused flickering in her tired eyes. "Is he?" I shrugged. "Guess I get by." For a while we just listened. The hum of the heater, the scrape of forks on plates from a couple of farmers at the counter, the wind outside still pushing at the glass. When June brought eggs and toast, the woman hesitated before eating, like she wasn't used to being served without someone expecting something in return. "Thank you," she said softly. June waved it off. "Honey, this town runs on thank yous. You just enjoy it." The woman's eyes lingered on her, then came back to me. "You stopped for a stranger," she said, her voice steadier now. "Most people wouldn't have." I sipped my coffee. Maybe they forgot how. I just didn't want my daughter learning that lesson. She nodded slowly. "That's rare." I shrugged again. "Not where I come from." She looked down at her plate. "I used to believe in people that way. Then life started trimming that belief down." "Yeah," I said. "World'll do that if you let it. But sometimes stopping for somebody's the only thing that keeps the rest of it from freezing over." She looked at me then. Really looked. And for a second the CEO polish I didn't yet know about slipped, showing something human and tired underneath. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. "My name's Claire." "Ben," I said, offering my hand across the table. "And that's Ella, professional backseat navigator." Claire's handshake was firm but shaking slightly from exhaustion. "Thank you, Ben." I don't think I'd have made it another hour out there. Then I'm glad we crossed paths, I said. Wyoming winters don't give second chances. She smiled faintly, that same tired grace trying to find its footing again. You must do this kind of thing a lot. Not the rescuing, no, but fixing broken engines, busted fences, hearts if I have to, I said, half joking, half not. Her eyes softened. Then you understand what it means to hold things together when they want to fall apart. Yeah, I said. I do. We ate mostly in silence after that. The kind that feels like rest, not distance. When the plates were clean and her color looked almost normal again, I offered to tow her SUV back to town and park it near the inn. She started to protest, but stopped herself. You've already done too much. I pulled on my gloves. You didn't ask. That's what makes it worth doing. Outside, the snow had eased into a steady fall, gentle now instead of angry. While I hooked the chain from my truck to her bumper, she stood nearby, watching. The headlights caught the snowflakes drifting between us, turning the air gold for a second. When we were done, I opened the truck door for her. There's a warm bed waiting at the Maple Inn. Tell Marie at the desk Ben sent you. She'll treat you like family. She hesitated, one hand on the door frame. I don't know how to repay you. Don't, I said. Just pay it forward next time someone needs a hand. She gave me a look I couldn't quite read, gratitude mixed with something else, something unsettled, and said, I'll try. As she drove off toward the inn, her taillights disappeared into the falling snow. Ella was already half asleep when I carried her inside. I locked up, checked the forecast, and stood by the window watching the storm fade into quiet. I figured that was the end of it. One good deed, one warm conscience. I had no idea that by morning, the woman from the snow would walk back into my life wearing a suit that could buy my truck twice over and a smile that would change everything I thought I knew about luck. Morning came with sunlight bouncing off fresh snow and the kind of quiet that makes you think the storm never happened. I rolled out of bed early, made pancakes for Ella, and packed her lunch for school before heading to the shop. My world, like always, was simple. Oil changes, brake jobs, frozen bolts that needed a little convincing. I liked it that way. Predictable. Honest work. The shop smelled like grease and burnt coffee, same as any other day. I'd barely gotten the first wrench in my hand when I heard tires crunch on the lot. Big vehicle, smooth idle, not one of our usual beat-up pickups. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped out. The black SUV from last night gleamed in the sunlight, spotless now, like it had never kissed a snowbank. Out stepped the woman I'd pulled out of that storm, though calling her the woman didn't quite fit anymore. Her name, Claire, came back to me. But this morning, she didn't look like someone who needed saving. She wore a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, her hair neatly tied, heels sharp against the concrete floor. The same eyes met mine, but this time they were steady, not lost. Morning, I said, still holding the rag. Truck giving you more trouble. She smiled, calm, polished, practiced. Not exactly. I came to find you. That line caught me off guard. Me? Yes. She extended her hand, businesslike. Claire Reynolds, CEO of Silverline Industries. I froze. Silverline, as in the Silver Line we do contracts for? The same one, she said with a small nod. And you're the mechanic who saved my life last night. For a second, I just stared, the wrench in my hand feeling heavier than steel had any right to be. All that storm, all that chaos, and she turns out to be one of the most powerful people in the state. Before I could form a reply, my boss, Frank Lang, stepped out from the office, tugging at his tie like it was choking him. Miss Reynolds, he said quickly, his tone changing faster than I'd ever heard it. What an honor to see you here. If we'd known you were coming. I wasn't planning to, Claire said smoothly, her eyes still on me. But I wanted to personally thank Mr. Turner for what he did last night. Lang blinked, confused. Turner? You mean Ben? He's one of our, part-timers. Good with engines, though he's missed a few shifts lately. Family things, I suppose. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept quiet. Claire's gaze shifted to him, cool and controlled. Family things, she repeated. You mean his daughter? Lang cleared his throat. Well, yes, but still. Interesting, she said, cutting him off. Because while your other drivers passed me by on the highway last night, this part-timer was the only one who stopped. The only one who noticed. Lang paled. I'm sure they didn't realize it was you, ma'am. They realized someone was stranded, she said firmly. And they kept driving. Her words hit the room like a dropped wrench. Even the air compressor seemed to go quiet. Then she turned to me again, her tone softening. You said you've been a mechanic for 12 years? Yes, ma'am, I said. Started right out of high school. Learned by doing, mostly. Guess I've got a good ear for machines that don't talk back. That earned the faintest smile from her. I could use someone like that. Someone who listens before fixing. I frowned. Use me how? At our main division, she said simply. I need someone who understands how the machinery breathes, not just how it runs. Full-time position. Benefits, relocation package, direct oversight from me. Lang nearly choked. Miss Reynolds, with respect, that's a high-level position. Turner's a capable worker, but he's not. He's exactly what this company needs, she interrupted, calm but final. Integrity, patience, compassion, the rest we can teach. Lang tried again, but she didn't even glance his way. The discussion was over, and everyone in the shop knew it. I stood there, rag still in hand, trying to catch up. You're serious about this? Completely, she said. But I understand if it's a lot to take in. You've got your daughter, routines, your life here. Yeah, I said slowly. She's in school. Moving would be tough. Her expression softened in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. I grew up with a single parent, she said quietly. Sometimes staying put isn't what keeps you stable. It's showing your child what courage looks like. That landed deeper than I expected. She said it not as a boss, not as a CEO, but as someone who'd been tired, alone, and kept going anyway. I nodded slowly. You already thanked me. You don't have to do this. She tilted her head slightly. Maybe I don't. But maybe kindness deserves a little momentum. For the first time that morning, I laughed. A small, real one. There's always a catch. Her eyes warmed. Only one. Show up on time. Even Lang chuckled weakly at that. Claire reached into her bag, pulled out a silver embossed card, and handed it to me. Her handwriting curved across the bottom in blue ink. For saving a stranger and reminding her what matters. Think about it, she said. If you're interested, call by Monday. Either way, you've earned my respect. I took the card carefully, like it was something fragile. Thank you, Miss Reynolds. She smiled, softer this time. Claire, she corrected. Before she turned to leave, Ella came running in from the back office where she'd been coloring, holding one of her drawings, a crayon picture of my truck with a tiny stick figure in a snowstorm. Miss Claire, Daddy said you were brave. Claire bent down, her expensive suit brushing the dusty floor, and smiled at her. He said that, did he? Ella nodded. He said brave people help each other. For the first time, I saw something crack behind Claire's perfect composure. Her eyes shimmered as she tucked a strand of hair behind Ella's ear. Your dad's right. And so are you. Then she straightened, looked at me once more, and said quietly, Tell your daughter she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That real strength doesn't wear a suit. And with that, she walked out, snowflakes trailing from her coat, leaving the shop silent except for the faint ticking of the cooling engines. I stood there a long while, holding that card, wondering what exactly had just happened. Because sometimes the people you pull out of a storm don't just walk away. Sometimes they come back and hand you a whole new direction. I didn't get much sleep that weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silver business card glinting in the light like it was waiting for me to make a choice. It sat on the kitchen counter beside Ella's cereal bowl, next to a pile of unpaid bills and a half-finished drawing of a snowman she'd taped to the fridge. Life at our little house had always been small, but steady. Mornings were predictable, coffee, toast, and the sound of cartoons humming in the background. But that card made everything feel unsteady, like someone had cracked the window open in the middle of winter and the air had changed. Friday night, I told myself I wasn't going to call her. I didn't belong in a place with glass elevators and people who wore suits to meetings about other meetings. I was a mechanic from a two-stoplight town. My hands looked like sandpaper. My boots leaked. I didn't fit in her world. Saturday, I tried to convince myself I was content. Fixed a neighbor's tractor. Changed the oil on Mrs. Raymond's sedan. Every job I finished, I told myself, this is enough. But every time I wiped my hands on the same old rag, I couldn't shake the thought of what she'd said about courage and about showing your kid what it looks like to reach for more. That night, after Ella fell asleep, I sat out on the porch with a cup of cold coffee, staring at the stars. The snow was quiet again, soft around the edges of the yard. I thought about Claire's face in the blizzard, the way she'd looked at me like I'd reminded her of something real. It wasn't just a job offer. It was something else. A door opening. Sunday morning, Ella crawled into my lap while I was reading the classifieds, trying to act like I wasn't thinking about it. "Daddy," she said, "are we gonna move?" I blinked. "Why would you think that, Peanut?" She pointed to the business card on the counter. "You keep looking at that thing. That means something." "Smart kid. It's just a job, sweetheart. A big one. Way out of town." She frowned in that serious way kids do when they're trying to sound grown. "Do they have pancakes there?" I laughed. "Probably." "Then we'll be fine," she said, resting her head against my chest. "You always fix everything, Daddy. You'll fix this too." I didn't have an answer for that. Not right away. But I hugged her a little tighter because maybe she already had it figured out better than I did. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Ben Turner, a calm, familiar voice said. I didn't even have to ask. "Miss Reynolds, sorry, Claire." She chuckled softly. "You remembered." Hard to forget the woman who walked into my shop and turned my life upside down. "I wasn't calling to pressure you," she said. "I just wanted to make sure you're thinking about it for you, not for me." I leaned back in my chair. "That's exactly what I've been doing all weekend." "Good," she said, because I meant what I said. "You've got something most people in my building don't, a reason to care. I can teach you corporate policy, but I can't teach that." I stared at the card again, tracing the embossed logo with my thumb. "If I say yes, what happens next?" "You start by trusting that you belong," she said. "Then you come in Monday morning, and we'll figure out the rest together." There was a pause. I could hear the faint hum of her city office behind her voice, but her tone wasn't businesslike. It was personal, almost gentle. "I grew up watching my dad work double shifts," she said quietly. "He used to come home covered in grease, same as you. When he died, I built everything I have trying to prove it was worth something. But lately, I've been wondering if I left the best part of him behind. Then you showed up. That one landed hard." I swallowed, throat dry. "I'm no hero, Claire. I just did what anyone should have done." "Exactly," she said. "That's why you're the kind of person I want on my team." When we hung up, I sat there staring at the phone for a long minute. Then I turned to Ella, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing a big snowflake with crayons. "Hey, Peanut," I said. "How would you feel about moving to a new place for a while?" She looked up, grinning. "Will there be snow?" "Knowing us," I said, "probably." Monday morning, I packed our bags. Not much to it. Some clothes, Ella's drawings, a few tools I couldn't leave behind. The drive to the city felt like crossing into another world. When the Silverline building came into view, tall glass catching the sun, I almost turned back. But then I heard her voice in my head. Sometimes stability isn't about staying still. It's about showing them what they're capable of. So I parked, took Ella's hand, and walked toward the entrance. I had no idea what waited on the other side of those glass doors. All I knew was this. The storm had tested me, but maybe it was time to see what calm looked like when you earned it. Walking into Silverline headquarters felt like stepping into another planet. The lobby gleamed with marble and glass, sunlight pouring through windows higher than any building in my hometown. People in suits moved like clockwork, badges, briefcases, polite smiles that never reached their eyes. I caught a few glances at my flannel shirt and worn boots, the same way folks at the country diner looked at city tourists. I didn't belong here, and everyone seemed to know it. Then I heard her voice. "Ben." I turned, and there she was, Claire Reynolds, same sharp suit, same composure, but her smile wasn't the kind she used at press conferences. It was smaller, realer. "You came," she said, sounding almost relieved. "Still not sure if I'm dressed for the part," I admitted. She smiled. "You're exactly what this place needs." She led me through hallways lined with framed patents and design sketches. Engines, turbines, prototypes of machines I'd only ever seen in magazines. Engineers in white coats stopped talking when she passed. I followed quietly, trying not to look too impressed. When we reached a workshop full of half-built engines, she stopped beside a group of frustrated designers. A half-assembled machine sat on a lift, its parts scattered like bones. "This prototype's been giving us trouble for months," she said. "You once told me you fix what's broken. Prove it." I blinked. "You're serious?" She stepped aside. "Go ahead." The engineers looked at me like I'd just wandered in from the parking lot. And technically, I had. But I rolled up my sleeves anyway. Tools are tools no matter where you stand. I traced the fuel line with my fingers, followed it to the regulator, and spotted it almost immediately, a misaligned valve choking the pressure. "Here's your problem," I said, tightening the fitting. "Too much resistance. The system's trying to breathe through a straw." I hit the ignition switch, and the engine coughed, then settled into a smooth, steady hum. The whole room turned to stare. Claire folded her arms, a slow smile spreading across her face. "How?" I shrugged. "Sometimes you just have to listen. Machines tell you what they need if you're patient enough to hear it." She nodded slowly. "People too." That line hung in the air longer than either of us planned. Later that afternoon, she called me into her office. Big windows, city skyline, and her name etched on a metal plate that probably weighed more than my truck's transmission. She motioned for me to sit. "Ben," she said quietly, "I didn't hire you out of gratitude. I hired you because I needed someone who still believes in decency." I frowned. "You mean kindness?" "That, and purpose," she said. "This company grew so fast it forgot why it started. You reminded me of that." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She hesitated, then added, "When I was stuck in that blizzard, I wasn't just freezing. I was burned out, surrounded by people who'd work for me, but none who cared. You did." And it reminded me what leadership is supposed to mean. There was something fragile in her tone, something I'd never heard in her before. I looked at her and saw not the CEO from the magazines, but the woman from that night in the snow, shivering in the dark and still trying to stay composed. "Well," I said softly, "guess that storm did both of us a favor." Her eyes met mine, and for a moment the room went still. Then she smiled, the kind that carried warmth instead of armor. "Head of Field Mechanics," she said. "That's your title now. You'll rebuild this department in your way. Teach them to listen before fixing." I stared. "You're serious?" "Completely." Something in me shifted right then. Not pride exactly, but a quiet sense that maybe, after all the years of grinding through small-town work and sleepless nights, I'd finally landed somewhere that saw me for what I was worth. Months passed. I kept my head down, trained new techs, and brought back the kind of integrity most people forgot you could find in a shop floor. The company changed, little by little. And so did Claire. The headlines called her Silverline's heart, but that wasn't the whole story. The real one happened one Friday evening when she stopped by my new workshop with a small box under her arm. Inside was a model airplane for Ella, painted sky blue. "She looks up to you, you know," she said. I smiled. "Funny, I could say the same about you." Her laugh was soft, tired in the best way. Not the CEO laugh anymore, just her. Outside, snow had started falling again. Not the kind that buries roads or traps people in their cars, but the kind that turns streetlights into halos. She stood beside me, watching it drift past the window, and said quietly, "It's strange, isn't it? How a storm can destroy things and still give you something better." I looked at her reflection in the glass, the city lights dancing across her face. "Guess sometimes the rescue goes both ways." She turned, eyes meeting mine, and for a moment neither of us needed to say anything else. That night, when I got home, Ella ran to the window shouting, "Daddy, it's snowing again." I pulled her close, watching the flakes fall slow and easy, no fear in them anymore. The blizzard that started it all was long gone, but its echo stayed, a reminder that sometimes the road you didn't plan on taking ends up leading you exactly where you were meant to be.